The 13 Original Clown Mothers by Jamie Sams. The January Clown Mother is Talks with Relations, and her cycle of truth is Learn the Truth. This is the story of Talks with Relations when she was in human form, learning all the lessons she needed to learn to then go into the Sky Nation to guide us as we travel the medicine wheel. Brought to you by Sunshine Kitty Hawk. Talks with Relations marvelled at the luxurious green of the Earth Mother's verdant forests and valleys. The great ice mountain had not yet travelled this far south, so parts of the only landmass, Turtle Island, were given a short reprieve. Life was teeming among the nooks and crannies of every inch of sunlight soil and plant growth that spread before her. She stretched and raised her arms to the light of Father Sun. "Oh, what a pleasure to be alive," she whispered to herself. Just then, a movement, sly and barely perceivable, caught her attention. She slowed her breathing and squatted low in the sprawling bunch of wild irises and tall cattails at her feet. Not daring to make a sound, she stilled herself until her body gave off no perceivable rhythm of its own. She did not want to disturb the natural occupants of the forest glen or to keep them from their daily routines, which would eventually bring them to the brook that ran far to the left of her hiding place. She was content to wait and see if the creature that had created the rustle in the undergrowth would show itself. It was not long until a tiny red fox peeked around a boulder resting at the side of the bubbling brook and dashed for the water's edge, took a quick drink, and then dashed back to safety. After deciding it must be safe, despite the strange smell that wafted in and out with the changing breeze, the fox returned. As the little fellow drank from the stream, he occasionally peered around to assure himself that his senses were not fooling him into complacency. Suddenly, he was so startled that he became paralyzed when he found himself looking into the kindest eyes he'd ever seen. The eyes seemed to be attached to a two-legged human. "Greetings, Brother Fox," Talks with Relations said gently. "I trust that I did not frighten you." Fox forgot himself and replied spontaneously, "I thought I was the one who was so expert at the art of camouflage. You ought to be a fox, not a two-legged. How did you do it?" "Or you don't have to answer that. I already know how, because I do it myself." "Well, Fox, it may surprise you to know that I have walked the earth for many suns and many sleeps, getting to know all my relations," he replied. "It is important for me to learn the ways of all my children because I am the mother of nature. And I must learn the needs of every creature teacher, plant person and stone person, so I may serve my family in a good way." Fox looked at Talks with Relations and saw that she was telling the truth. He began to wonder how this beautiful and generous two-legged had happened to choose him to talk to. But he was afraid to ask. He was taken aback when her laughter filled the glen with the most melodic, sound-like songs he had ever heard. "Oh, Fox," she said, "you are a master of invisibility, but you have forgotten to mask your thoughts. Don't you know that I have learned the truth held in the hearts and minds of every living thing? You need not be afraid to ask me anything. Grouse taught me how to enter the sacred spiral of rhythm in order to be in harmony with all the children in learning the truth about rhythms. I have been able to weave our thoughts and hearts together so there is no separation between us." At that moment, Centipede came scampering down a log that had fallen across the brook in the last big rain. Her multitude of legs, rhythmically moving in time, suddenly seemed to trip upon one another as she tried valiantly to come to a halt in front of Talks with Relations. Her long back arched as she pulled up to a stop, with her rear end curling up like a dry autumn leaf before finally coming to a halt. My goodness, she whispered, nearly out of breath. I thought I heard your sweet laughter, Mother. I'd know that musical sound anywhere. What a pleasant surprise. Fox looked for Torque's relations to Centipede, wondering how they knew each other. Then he decided he had better sit down on the boulder by the brook to sun himself. It appeared that this reunion would probably take a while, and his feet had been getting cold while he was standing in the water, listening to Talks with Relations. Centipede, it has been many long moons since we have spoken. I must thank you for teaching me how to find my body's center and stride. The long walks to the sea and to the plains took many suns and sleeps, but my arms and legs were working in harmony. It felt wonderful with every body part working in rhythm with each other. We can both remember when I was a mess of arms and legs, tripping over every pebble and scraping every bush, can't we? Talks with Relations said. Centipede giggled and replied, Well, I was so happy to see you again. I nearly rolled down this cottonwood log. I forgot my own medicine too. When I get excited, I keep on growing extra legs in my old age, and I seem to have to teach the new ones how to work in unison with the old ones over and over again. Talks with Relations smiled and said, I certainly understand how you feel, Many Legs. Setting up the rhythms of the seasons has been a task as well. The Earth Mother is still changing her path in the Sky Nation, and the green moons of new sprouting grasses are growing shorter, while the winter moons seem to grow longer, with more snow and ice. Fox spoke up and asked, Is that why so many of the creature beings of the steppies are coming our way? Steppies are coming our way? Centipede nodded, and Talks with Relation agreed. You see, Fox, the Earth Mother has given me the task of learning about the needs of all Earth tribe, so I may assist her in finding the correct path across the Sky Nation. Eventually, there will be 4 seasons and 4 winds of change that will assist all of us in finding the rhythms and harmony. The 3 white moons will give us a time of rest, when the ice beings will cover the soil. Then the green moons will begin for 3 cycles, bringing new life to the plant people. Then the 3 yellow moons will bring a time of ripening and fullness. The 3 red moons will follow, bringing the time of harvest. The 13th moon is the blue moon, when all the children of Earth will find their natural ability to change or transform. Centipede sighed and smiled. It will be a good thing to see Mother, and all of us will give thanks for the work you are doing on our behalf. Talks with Relations was pleased that she was learning the truth of how to fulfill the needs of all the children of Earth and how to understand their medicines. Life was good, and each new day brought new lessons to be learned, new truths to explore, and new rhythms to add to the whole. She was discovering that she had made every living thing her relative when she entered the flow of each relation's rhythms and listened to the inner drum of the heartbeats of each. Her mind flew to the memory of how she had first learned the lesson, as Grandfather Sun's light sent warm orange beams through her closed eyelids. She drifted to that long ago moon and saw a swan drifting across a high mountain lake. That sun had been unusually warm. Talks with Relations had been speaking with Blue Jay, who was teaching the medicine and talents of the standing people or the pine people. Blue Jay was not talking for the trees because the standing people could talk. Talks with Relation had asked Blue Jay to come with her because his medicine was using intuition to speak the truth. In those early days, she was just learning how to use her human body to sense things. Being a little unsure of her new skills, she had asked Blue Jay to accompany her. For hours, the 2 friends had sat with the standing people, listening as the wind chief gently blew through the limbs of the trees, bringing their voices to life. Talks with Relations had first experienced human frustration during that sun. She was able to understand the medicine of Aspen, who was the seer and carrier, observer medicine. because her own eyes could see the eye-like forms in Aspen's trunk. Every place a branch had disconnected and fallen. She was able to feel the medicine of inner peace when she sat with her back against Pine's sturdy trunk. She felt Dogwood's medicine of balance when she saw the blossoms which formed the four directions of the sacred hoop. But her initiation was failing her in hearing and understanding the languages of these standing relations, the trees. Blue Jay was very kind to Talks with Relations and called for a break in the lessons. He could see her frustration was bringing her close to tears. How very human she is, and yet how very inhuman in her willingness to treat all things with such respect. He thought to himself, I am not afraid to speak the truth to her because she wants to learn the truth more than anything else. My intuition tells me she must also learn the importance of resting when her body's rhythms are being pushed beyond their capacity to endure. It must be difficult for her, no longer being in spirit form and having to limit herself to the perceptions of a human body. Blue Jay took Talks with Relations down the hill to the lake and had her sit in the sand along the shoreline, where clumps of soft green grass stood like hillocks meant for napping. While she settled her body on the grass-covered rise, Blue Jay told her that he was going to bring a friend to join them and that she should relax while he was gone. Talks with Relations was so caught up in her own frustration that she did not hear Blue Jay's message. And so her mind kept whirling with thoughts of how she could learn the language of the standing people. She did not even notice when Blue Jay returned with his friend Swan. Swan had glided effortlessly across the lake and was floating gently near the water's edge, patiently waiting. Blue Jay finally started squawking a long tirade in order to get Talks with Relations' attention. Well, Swan, we could push her in the lake or wash the frustration out of her head. Or we could call Ostrich to dig a hole in this stand, and then the three of us could bury her head, he screeched. But still, there was no reaction from Talks with Relations. Blue Jay saw Ostrich down the shoreline and called to her. While she was trotting over, he continued his mocking monologue. Well, here comes Ostrich. You will be shown how to bury your head in the sand instead of burying it in needless frustrations, Blue Jay said loud enough for Ostrich to hear. Talks with Relations was still lost in her turbulent thoughts when Ostrich sauntered up and shrugged her shoulders, wondering what to make of this young troubled woman. Swan waited patiently while Ostrich and Blue Jay decided to get the woman's attention. After a conspiratorial giggle, Blue Jay went to rest on a nearby piece of driftwood, and Ostrich bent over and tweaked Talks with Relations' nose. Talks with Relations was so startled she cried out, not from pain, for Ostrich had been very gentle, but from the shock of suddenly seeing two of the largest, heavy-lidded eyes she had ever encountered at close range. Everyone was laughing uncontrollably, except for Talks with Relations, who was stunned into silence. Blue Jay commented that she must have been tied up by her own machinations. Swan replied that Ostrich, whose medicine was how to interact with others through communication, could lend a helping wing now that he had Talks with Relations' attention. Each comment brought further peals of laughter until the young woman saw the ridiculousness of the situation and joined in herself. In between rolling waves of laughter, Ostrich explained to Talks with Relations that when others were not communicating clearly or interacting in a way that would include everyone, Ostrich also had the tendency to bury her head. So he had those two messages to teach her, that when others are not communicating clearly or interacting in a way that would include others, right, or they buried their heads. When even one person was excluded from a group, Ostrich would imitate those refusing to listen to everyone's ideas by burying her head in the sand until someone noticed. They usually noticed when they were confronted with Ostrich's rear end, sticking in the air, giving them an idea of what she thought of them. In the present situation, Ostrich had not needed to bury her head because Talks with Relations had already buried her own head in frustrations. The laughter had definitely changed the mood of the afternoon, and Talks with Relations was now refreshed and paying attention instead of wondering why human limitations seemed to curtail her natural abilities to just know. She was learning the lessons of how to use human senses, and the laughter felt good as it rolled from her lips and made her belly jiggle. Her heart was feeling the warmth of friendship, and her skin was tingling from the spray of water Swan's wings had stirred up during the excitement. She decided that it was good to feel the pleasure of a body that was happy to be alive. Ostrich and Blue Jay watched silently as Swan spoke to Talks with Relations in a soothing way, gently sliding across the glassy water, creating another change in mood. You see how my body curves and my neck slopes and undulates when I move across the water? She asked. Talks with Relations nodded in agreement as Swan continued. The water spirits do not resist the movement of my body. They assist me in feeling the flow of their currents as well as my own. Watch me glide into the lake and watch the gracefulness of my neck as I show you the water dance. Talks with Relations' body began to be lulled into the same rhythm as Swan. As she watched, it seemed as if the small breeze had brought the lapping waves of the water spirits into Talks with Relations' body. She began to drift and dream as the hypnotic movements of Swan's body taught her to surrender. When she awoke, she understood how she could learn the languages of all living things. She could do more than observe and feel from her own viewpoint. She had learned how to surrender to her own sacred space and sacred point of view, how to ask permission, and when it was received, how to enter the sacred space of another and learn their language. She was excited as she relayed her dreamtime experiences to Swan, Blue Jay, and Ostrich. In her dream, she had flown with Falcon and learned his medicine of hunting for solutions. Falcon had taken her deep into the jungles of Turtle Island and had shown her the streaming green realms of dense vegetation. There, the Earth Mother mirrored the steam of smoky human confusions and frustrations. Together, they had flown through the foggy confusion of the dream until they could see clearly. The snow sparkled on faraway peaks as they had viewed the mountain tops of the jungle below, where the great apes lived among the highlands and dense growth. Gorilla was the wordless storyteller who acted out and mimicked until the observer could see the solution or point of the story for himself or herself. In the dream, Talks with Relation had watched Gorilla while she circled with Falcon, seeing the mime from all directions. It was not long before Gorilla's strong medicine of communication and teaching through actions had brought understanding to Talks with Relations' heart. His movements had been funny at first until she had understood how he was teaching the others of his tribe to accomplish a given task. It was then that she noticed that he had imitated a younger ape in order to get its attention, then made a game of it so the youngster would imitate him. It became clear to her that Falcon had showed her a solution to her problem. She did not need to feel that she was separate from all other life forms because she had a human body. She could imitate their habits and see how it felt to be them. Through imitating the actions of her creature teachers, she could then surrender to the feelings she had when becoming like them. It did not matter that the teacher creatures were plants, stones, animals, clouds, or wind and water spirits. Understanding their languages would take time, but the more like them she became, and the more she could understand how and why their lives were similar to her own, the easier it would be for her to know how each species chose to communicate. Ostrich, Blue Jay, and Swan were very happy that Talks with Relations had broken through the frustration and into understanding. The foursome retreated to the soft shadows of the forest with Talks with Relations leading the way. She was determined to use her newly found understanding to communicate with her tree relations. Until now, she had merely observed and tried to listen to the wind spirits move gently through the emerald and jade of the standing people. Now, It was time to practice and develop her communication skills. With all her friends settled around her, she began to announce her intention. I have learned how to surrender to the rhythms of the sacred space around me, and now, with permission, I would like to become like a standing person, she said. The ancient pine tree person dropped a pine cone that rolled to her feet as an offering of friendship. She accepted the giveaway with pleasure. Talks with Relations knelt and dug a hole in the soft soil and needles, bearing her feet up to the ankles. Then she stood tall and proud and lifted her arms like branches to the rays of sunlight filtering through the dense green of the forest. Silence enveloped all of those gathered as she closed her eyes and became a human tree. It was then that she heard the voices of the standing people come from their wooden hearts to speak to hers. Our language is heard through the heart, not the ears. We speak of all we see in a place, for we are the silent observers of the earth. Our roots draw deeply from the well of love found in our Earth Mother's soil, and our limbs reach higher every day to seek the light of Father Sun. We are the living balance between Mother Earth and Father Sky, feminine and male, receiving and giving. Of all life forms, we are the closest in makeup to the human beings because we show them how to honor the balance of heaven and earth within ourselves. We show them through example how to be silent observers of life, how to stand tall, and how to give and receive. Though nothing stirred in the forest, no breeze blew through the burrows of tree people, Talks with Relations heard the voice of the ancient redwood. It pointed to her that her arms arched upwards, her body created 2 circles. The circles formed a figure 8. The upper circle met the lower circle in her heart, with the upper one encircling the Sky Nation and the lower one connecting her to the center of the Earth Mother. It was as if she were standing on top of one circle and holding the other one above her, using her body as a cross connection between the two. These are the 2 medicine wheels of life, Redwood said. The human beings, like the tree people, have the ability to be the balance between the earth and the sky. When the 2-leggeds reach for the most they can be, the sky wheel brings the messages of the spirit world to them through their human hearts. The earth wheel allows the plants, stone, animals, and elements of nature to be Earth Mother's teachers and interpreters of those spiritual messages. Human beings feel and understand the messages that the Great Mystery sends by observing the actions of the teachers that these planetary counterparts represent. Meeting in the heart, both medicine wheels show that heaven and earth, the spiritual and the tangible, are equal and are one. You see, Talks with Relations, the only true limitation of being human, comes when the heart is closed. When the heart is open, all of creation can be accessed and understood. You have become that balance now, and it will serve you well. The memory of that time and the lessons learned filled the Mother of Nature's body with a warm feeling, gently bringing her back to the moment. The orange glow that had reflected Grandfather Sun's light on her eyelids had changed to a deep salmon color, signaling that the sun was nearly at its end. She could hear the trout jumping for flies in the melodious brook. She could smell the first wafts of night blooming jasmine, and she tested the moisture that was collecting on the stones at the water's edge. Inside her mind, pictures of these changes were dancing with hundreds of other perceptions. She could hear the faint snore of fox who had fallen asleep and the scratching of centipede's many legs against the cottonwood trunk. Yes, she thought, I have learned well. Truth speaks to me now, in hundreds of ways, though through all the senses of body, heart, mind, and spirit. I can feel the rhythms of animals' feet through the soil as they approach the water for their evening drink. I can feel the lights of stars even before they poke holes in the purple blanket of the early evening sky. Life sends me flutters of feelings deep in my belly and every rhythmic change around me, and I feel those changes inside me, for I am an extension of it all. While with her eyes still closed, Talks with Relations gently and quietly reached for the stone person she had hanging around her neck. by a thong. The rock had a natural hole in it that had been created by the constant dripping of water over hundreds of passages, suns, and sleeps. The stone person's name was Onio, or Song. This special medicine stone still sang to her and recorded all her heart felt and all she experienced, reminding her of the history she was creating by being alive. The natural hole in Onio's body was a sign that the rock was a protection stone because the hole was created by water. The stone helped Talks with Relations to stay in touch with her feelings and to be aware if danger was present. Talks with Relations' body was made of the same minerals as the rock and therefore helped her stay in tune with the heartbeat of Mother Earth. The stone people, being the libraries of Earth's history, had been very helpful when she had learned their language. Through her journeys, she had come to understand the makings of their bodies in much the same manner she had learned the language of the standing people. Through the stone people, she had come to understand that all forces in nature have cycles and that these cycles are present in the growth of all things. She had been able to review the history of all that had happened on Earth, and she was now shown the natural evolution of all life forms as the stones had recorded it. The shell cousins from the seeds had taught her to listen to the rhythms of the tides and to her own body's cycles. The cloud people had shown her the faces and forms of all things in the natural world. When one of the various children of Earth was in danger, the face of the one who called for help would take the form in the clouds. The clan chiefs of air, earth, water, and fire had blended and separated in her presence to teach her the spontaneous forces of creation found in nature. With this knowing system firmly rooted in her heart, Talks with Relations was able to command the weather, bringing life-giving rains or new lava flows to maintain the balance needed on the planet. Learning the truth is a continuous adventure and brings with it a constant source of fulfillment, she mused. I have been blessed with the hunger to learn, the joy of discovery, and the desire to serve my kin. I have learned the languages of every part of the Earth tribe. Each day, I discover the caring and compassion that allows me to learn more. Life creates more life, and so I will continue to celebrate the lessons I have learned in order to share them with all my children forever. Talks with Relations opened her eyes and saw that day had quietly passed, the pipe to night. The starry medicine bowl of the night sky had produced a quarter moon, and the nocturnal animals were stirring. Centipede and fox had faithfully waited for Talks with Relations to return from entering the silence, not moving an inch from their former places. Grandmother Moon's blue-silver light played on the crests of water that flowed through the rounded stones of the creek bed, while the water spirits murmured their evening traveling songs. When Talks with Relations spoke to her friends, she whispered, I am pleased that you waited for me, children. During my silence, I remembered how much I have learned about the truths present in every part of creation, and how much I can learn as our world continues to evolve. Centipede curled herself in a ball and rolled down the log to be closer to Talks with Relations. Mother, maybe your gathering wisdom is similar to my growing legs, she whispered. I may be growing extra legs because I am becoming older and wiser. I suppose that each of our relations has some way to measure the distance they travel on this good red road of life. Talks with Relations replied, yes, many legs. We all have our unique ways to gather wisdom, but the way we share our language and our understanding is the key to our common growth as a planetary family. Fox laughed and wiggled his whiskers before interjecting. I understand that key, Mother Fox. I understand that key. Mother Fox is the protector of the planetary family because no one can learn the medicine and languages of nature if they can't see what is right in front of them. All wisdom is camouflage like me. Unless people believe in the invisible world, which only becomes visible when they open their hearts to understanding and learning the truth. The clown mother of the first moon cycle smiled. Being the mother of nature meant that she would follow whatever came to her naturally. At this moment, her heart was so full that it was natural to allow the love in her heart to spill over into the world, allowing all the children of Earth to know they were not forgotten, and that their needs would always be taken care of. Talks with Relations had learned the truth about being in a human body, and now it was up to her human children to discover it for themselves. When each individual two-legged opened his or her heart to learning the truth of the planetary family, she would be there to teach them. When the human tribe opened their hearts with respect for all living things, she would be there to nurture them into respecting themselves and each other in kind. When the cycles and seasons brought pain to the human race, she would be there healing the human natural world around them. Not the human natural world. She would be there healing the natural world around them. The intangible world of spirit found in the tangible world was awaiting discovery. Her human children would be the last to learn these truths. She found joy in the knowledge that human arrogance would one day melt away. That sun would rise when the cycles and seasons brought those who were willing to give up their pain home to their hearts. Yes, life is good, she whispered into the star-filled night, just loud enough for those with open hearts to hear. I hope you enjoyed Talks with Relations story as much as I did. Enjoy this beautiful month, and I'll see you for Wisdom Keeper.